It's finally morning. Time to find out what today's new Primaris Lieutenant looks like. Woohoo! I bet he has a cool sword. Okay, let's see. Hey, what's going on? There's no models. There's no Space Marines at all. Portrait of an empty throne, so recently occupied by the beneficiary of a rags to riches story written in the stars. A would-be king who thought itself a giant. It had legions at its beck and call, but now it's nothing but air. It's gone. And so the battered subjects of a miniature wargaming hobby are about to find out what happens when a beanstalk gets cut down, felled by a blow that could only have come from the Discourse Zone. Hey everyone, my name is Discourse, and today I want to talk to you about what would happen to Warhammer and the miniature wargaming hobby if Games Workshop just disappeared. So yes, it's a spooky, scary episode today. Well, I mean, we are getting closer to Halloween. I think it's a pretty appropriate time for a horror episode. So earlier this week, I talked about how Games Workshop are looking a little weak in the proverbial knees recently. And don't worry, you don't need to have watched that in order to get this video, because all we're going to do today is play a very speculative game and ask, what would the miniature wargame hobby and Warhammer look like if Games Workshop were to just collapse? We don't need to varnish the circumstances of the disappearance here. Huh? Did you like that? I'm replacing normal words with miniature game lingo. Let me know if it works. But we're just going to imagine a world where everybody goes to bed one night and then wake up with Games Workshop gone. Just poof out of existence. Although, I guess the Australians would be awake for it. Time zones, they're real. So this wouldn't be an alternative universe where Games Workshop never existed. Rather, they existed one day and were gone the next. Or they just decided to go all in on animation and just drop the miniatures thing altogether. Think of it like a midlife crisis. Only instead of getting a Harley Davidson and a new girlfriend, they've opted to buy Studio Ghibli and are now working on a movie trilogy about the life of Gore Halfhorn, the Beastman bounty hunter in space. Hey, that doesn't sound too bad actually. I think I would watch that. So Games Workshop have a soft monopoly on the miniature wargaming market right now. It's not like they beat up new companies that show up in the marketplace. Although, if you look at what they did with Footsore Miniatures, formerly Warbanner Miniatures, Games Workshop did kind of steal their lunch money. But still, the vast majority of hobbyists have either played some Games Workshop product, are vaguely aware of some Games Workshop product, or were introduced to the miniature wargaming hobby by a Games Workshop product. It's not unfair to say that they are basically top dog in the miniature marketplace. So the disappearance from this space would have major reverberations for both hobbyists and the industry. And the first big impact would be on the high street. So Games Workshop have 523 stores in the world right now, which is pretty substantial, especially in the UK where 138 stores reside. So this is something that I can only really speak about my own experience as someone in the UK. So Americans, Australians, everyone else, feel free to put your own experiences in the comments below, because I imagine what I'm about to say might be a little bit less relevant for your locations. Because while I have a few independent stores in my local area, the biggest, longest serving store is a Games Workshop store. So if Games Workshop disappeared overnight, that would obviously affect loads of hobbyists in my area because they've been trained to go there for everything they need. And it really is the most visible beacon in my local area for the hobby. Now this is a problem of Games Workshop's own making, because ever since the 90s, Games Workshop have taken great pains to collate information like which local stores are the most profitable and which ones are selling the most Warhammer products. And wow, what do you know? Soon enough, a new Games Workshop store would appear in the same area. And then suddenly that profitable independent store would be competing with one of their major suppliers. And yeah, they tended to lose a lot of their customer base. Many of them didn't survive, except independent stores never lost my custom, especially considering the fact that the last time I was in a GW store, the shelves were filled to the brim with Space Marines and Stormcast Eternals. There was literally zero Beastman. Nada. Zip. Zilch. Not a thing. Not even the Beastman Start Collecting box was to be found. Come on! No, that hall of consumerism had nothing to offer one such as I, a mere humble, discerning customer. Sorry, I started channeling Frasier there and just couldn't stop. And And this is why I have some affiliate links to stores that I recommend below. Because luckily there are still independent stores. Which is great because even if Games Workshop were to disappear overnight, there would still be plenty of places to buy paints, tools, everything a hobbyist needs. But you've gotta think of the paints. Won't somebody think of the paints? People would really miss Citadel paints. For me, personally, I think the contrast paints are like the best thing that Games Workshop have ever done in all of their history. And I would love an opportunity to talk about that, so let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested in some sort of video on that. Maybe like a top 10 contrast paints video, or just 13 minutes of me gushing about how great they are. But yeah, generally speaking, Citadel paints would be a tough loss, even if they don't use dropper bottles. Please, Games Workshop, that is such an easy win. I have spilled so much paint over everything, it is always awful. Oh my god. And the null oil, it gets everywhere. But bear in mind that Citadel used to be a completely separate company, so maybe we'd see them emerge again as a separate entity. Which does bring up a very important point. Now obviously, if Games Workshop were to just close its doors forever, that would be 2,436 employees out of work. So yeah, I don't need to go into why that would obviously be a very bad thing. But we're operating on Twilight Zone logic here. So those employees are immediately employed by someone else, or busy penciling in every single strand of individual hair on Gore Halfhorn's chiseled chest. They're doing fine is my point. They still have employment. Twilight Zone! That said though, if Games Workshop were to just stop tomorrow, I'm pretty sure the UK economy would collapse. That would be a bit of a bummer, I'm not gonna lie. I do enjoy having food, but I could use less Primaris lieutenants. Win some, you lose some. Circle of life, probably worth. And another thing that the hobby would lose is the big flashy neon sign that is Warhammer. Because say what you want about the Warhammer games, books, and animations, but that sort of multimedia does an amazing job of advertising Warhammer. And that is actually really good for miniature wargaming. I've spoken on the channel before about how Warhammer acts like a funnel for the miniature wargaming hobby, but I don't think I've gone into specifics. So let me explain. There is a business concept called a sales funnel, and the funnel is really big and it's sort of broad at the top and narrows down. You know what? Look, okay, that's a funnel. And the funnel is really big and broad at the top, and then it sort of narrows down as you go. And Warhammer is basically the top of this funnel. It's big and it's broad and it says, jump in me. But it has its stores on the street and its books and its games, and people get invited in. So lots of people fall into this funnel. And then plenty get off at Warhammer 40k or Age of Sigmar, but others keep falling down the funnel. And it gets smaller and smaller as you go down, and the games get more obscure. And eventually you're flying past Necromunda and Blood Bowl. You'll make it to the other side amongst loads of different miniature games, like Bolt Action, Battletech, or Infinity. Now not everyone's going to make it there, but you originally jumped in the funnel for Warhammer. Now you've ended up here, playing war games about turnips. So in this sense, Games Workshop acts like the marketing wing of the hobby as a whole. And I hasten to add, this isn't exactly a charity here. They basically design all of their systems, from their paints to the miniatures to the words they use to communicate the Warhammer hobby. Their systems are designed to capture new hobbyists and lock them into the Games Workshop ecosystem and never let them escape. And this works to the extent that I have genuinely spoken to people who are not even aware that there are other game systems outside of Warhammer. But nevertheless, Games Workshop do attract a lot of new hobbyists, many of whom go on to try new systems, especially when they've been burned out on the predatory practices the Games Workshop like to utilize. So losing this marketing would actually be really bad for the hobby. And this is the main reason why I would miss Games Workshop if they were gone. Because I'm not sure who would step up to the plate and replace them. Sure, maybe you've got Asmodee with Star Wars Legion, which is a game that was sort of designed to print money and was sort of bungled from the start, to be honest. But we're staying on track here. So Asmodee would probably step out of Games Workshop's shadow and into their shoes, because they have big recognizable IPs like Star Wars and Marvel. And I don't think they'd be much better than Games Workshop. Like seriously, the only reason why Asmodee don't get caught robbing banks is because we're all too busy gawking at Games Workshop rob orphanages. So this element would really concern me. On the other hand though, maybe we would see an awesome company step up into the role and become the market leader and do loads of outreach and work with independent stores to get the word out there. Maybe that would be more than enough to green stuff the gap left behind by Games Workshop. Huh? Did you catch that? That's my thing now. Told you. I hope that would be true, but honestly, I don't know. Because personally, I'm someone who got into this hobby from a video game, and that was only possible with a really strong IP. Is there any other company that have the same capacity to do that? Comment below, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But now, we have to address the big ol' elephant in the room. The reason why you're here. Would the disappearance of Games Workshop kill Warhammer? Because in my opinion, the really funny thing would be that if Games Workshop were to disappear tomorrow, Warhammer itself wouldn't be dead. This sounds counterintuitive, I know. But if you look at a game like Star Wars Armada, that was just recently sort of ended, or soft closed. I mean, Atomic Mass Games aren't exactly going door to door and demanding their miniatures back, like a reverse Santa, presumably German. All evil Santas are German. The Office taught me that one. But they will not be producing any new Armada products. So think of the game like it's received its final layer of null oil. Oh. Guess this wasn't one. No. Now this was only announced in August, so it's still early days, and we are yet to see the full extent of how this will affect the Armada community. But as an outsider looking in, the Armada community seem as busy as ever. There are still tournaments being organized, people are asking for list building help in the subreddit, and there are still games going down at my local gaming place. It's sort of an advantage of a physical product like miniatures when compared to a video game. It's not ephemeral, it's tangible. You can hold it, you get to keep it, so you can still play with it. And sure, no new miniature sucks, but I mean, with the rise of 3D printing, we're sort of in a world now where we don't necessarily need big companies to produce new miniatures. Beyond just individuals going out and buying a 3D printer for their own use, or buying from recasters for that matter. There are lots of companies out there now who just print and sell miniatures, many of which are already presenting their miniatures as count-size miniatures for other systems, although they can still say they print Space Marines. Thanks, legal precedent. I will never get tired of making fun of Games Workshop for the Chapter House trial. Endless laughs. Now, would those miniatures be as good as the Games Workshop ones? If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you definitely not. But these days, things are a lot tighter, and the technology is developing every day. And you know, I think that the future of Games Workshop and 3D printers probably deserves its own video. But needless to say, you'd still be able to find Space Marines to buy even if Games Workshop were to disappear tomorrow. So really, the thing that would be missed from Games Workshop would be the rules. Although, sometimes I wish we'd get a break from new rules in Warhammer. Imagine like a month off. Yeah, that'd be nice. Preferably after everyone is at the same power level, which honestly would be pretty quick to happen if the community were put in charge of new codices. I still remember a lot of those old Warhammer Fantasy fan-made army books. There was army books for Albion, for Cathay, for the Famir, and they were very cool, and I remember really enjoying them. Now in fairness, I don't remember them being particularly well balanced, but no doubt a consensus would form in the community over time. It would just have some teething to do before the community coalesced around some specific rules. Fragmented at first, but I believe they'd come together. And I'm really confident that the community could come up with some really awesome rules. I mean, we're talking about the same community that one-page rules emerged from. So there's plenty of people in the Warhammer space who can take the broad essentials and craft something really interesting out of it. And you know, the more I talk about this, the more appealing it sounds, at least in terms of the playability of Warhammer 40k. I did not intend to make the argument in this video that Warhammer would be far better off without Games Workshop, but here we are. It just sort of happened. Huh, whoops. Hey, I've got the title of the video now at least. And this is all assuming that the IP wouldn't be picked up by someone else. You'd think a different miniature wargaming company wouldn't snap up the Warhammer IP at the first opportunity? It'd be like a shiver of sharks swarming a single drop of blood. Maybe Warlord Games could pick it up. They're just down the road from Games Workshop and owned by Rick Priestley, creator of Warhammer 40k. Oh, and this would actually be really good for Lord of the Rings fans as well. There have always been accusations that Games Workshop are sitting on the Lord of the Rings IP with the Middle-earth strategy battle game, and they're doing the bare minimum to prevent any other company getting their hands on it. And these accusations are pretty true in my opinion. And now there's that new Amazon show coming out. Are they even going to make any new miniatures for that? After the success of the Hobbit movie miniatures? Frankly, there are companies out there that could do a lot with the Lord of the Rings IP. For any other miniature wargaming company, if they had the Lord of the Rings IP, that would be their main premium line, not some dinky sideshow. So maybe the Middle-earth Games would get a new loving parent, one that would actually feed them second breakfast. I'd miss the system though. I like the dual rules. And boy, I'd really hope that battle companies would be maintained. Now obviously there'd be a lot of specialist games that might find it harder to survive. But then, I mean, Necromunda survived for many years without any support. So I think most of those games, like Blood Bowl, would probably do fine even in the absence of Games Workshop. We'd just be missing some leadership and direction for the games. You know, the big picture stuff. And those games would probably grow to be less popular. Without a company proselytizing for the system, there just wouldn't be the same injection of new blood. Not that Games Workshop do a great job of getting people into Necromunda or Blood Bowl, but still, that element would be missed. Although, I have been told there's a resurgence of Battlefleet Gothic and Inquisitor with the rise of 3D printing. So even unsupported, there are still smaller games out there trucking along. And that's everything, right? Not missing anything? Well, if you're not going to mention it, I suppose I will. Obviously, I'd be out of a job. Not that you seem to care. You weren't even screaming it at your screen. What about you, Discourse? What's gonna happen to you? But with Games Workshop gone, I'd probably be talking about Asmodee more. And indie games. That'd be nice. Maybe I'd be into Napoleonics. So obviously, this one was super speculative, and there is probably a lot of stuff that I missed. So let me know in the comments below what you think the hobby would look like tomorrow if Games Workshop were to disappear. And as always, a big thank you to my patrons who make all of this content possible. There is a link to my Patreon in the description of this video, so check that out for all the cool benefits you get. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. And I'll catch you next time. Bye bye!
Any entity that fails to recognize the importance of its customers writes its own death warrant. Time and date of execution unknown. Don't look for its demise in the obituaries, for it can only be found in the comments section of the official Warhammer YouTube channel.